That was probably the dumbest instrument I've played to date.
Well, it matches our personality. A couple of dumb people who are trying to do whatever they're doing.
Welcome to Riches and Rags, episode number 1. I am your host, Tyler Delao.
And I am Val Delao, your co-host.
Thank you very much.
I'm the younger one of the two.
As you can tell, we're time travelers, and we've been experimenting with time travel. So
That's right.
So, yeah.
Can I take these things off?
Yeah, you can take them off.
Okay.
We're not going to be watching.
People are going to think I have big ears.
That's fine. I am going to be playing with sound effects. He might be throwing some sound effects just for fun. But
who is he?
Our producer, our director guy, Cameron.
That good-looking fellow in the other office?
Yeah, we'll keep him anonymous. Keep him in the shadows, but he's running the he's running the fun operation on the back end there, trying to make me laugh.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's
Does he drink beer?
I don't know if he drinks so much anymore, but anymore he drinks a little bit. We all used to drink a bit. He's an old friend from way back in the day. So
I see.
You wanted to talk about eating disorders as a kind of jumping off point. I wanted to talk about finance, business, money.
Talk whatever you want to. We have 2 days.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about eating disorders.
No, not necessarily. It's just part of the discussion that you and I were having earlier. You know, last week we started with talking about. I was on TV for 25 years, and we were talking about that we are really not what we think we are. You know, we think ourselves as being good-looking or tall or short or skinny or fat, or our voice sounds differently, and we think we have a beautiful voice, and then when you record your voice, you realize that you sound squeaky or very low or whatever, and people are very surprised. I have never heard a person yet that they say, I like my voice. Most people, even big movie stars and singers and whatever, they do not like their voices, because all this time, these people were imagining that they had a particular voice, and it's not true because the microphone and the cameras do not lie. They just capture whatever you're presenting right before them. And so therefore, I remember the first time that I recorded my voice many years ago when I was young and good-looking. Now I'm just good-looking. There is a deal where I think I'm good-looking and I'm not, see, which is true. I'm a realist. But the first time that I heard my recorded voice, I was stunned.
Where was it? What type of recording device did you?
Well, my brother and I were trying to record some songs, and we were singing. We were
in a studio.
No, we were at the house. We had a little tape recorder.
A tape recorder.
In those years, tape recorder.
Oh, wow.
And in those years, you didn't have the other recorders that we have now. But we borrowed a tape recorder from somebody.
How big was it?
Small, about yay size, about
like
that size.
A shoebox, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit bigger.
A little bigger than a shoebox. Okay.
And in fact, I remember the brand, Wallensack, I believe, it was a German machine or something. Had two spinning things. And in fact, the other day I was going through my closet and I found an old record that we made from those tapes. And I was listening to it when we were 13, 14, 15 years old singing, playing the guitar and singing. And, you know, we were damn good for that time. But anyway, when I heard my voice for the first time, particularly on that tape, I said, my God, I sound like a mouse or something like I didn't like my voice.
How old were you?
But 14, 15.
That's how old I was. It was for me, too. It was a tape recorder. It was digital. It was about the size of maybe like a cigarette pack, but a rectangle. And same experience. Fascinating. I recorded it, and that's what I sound like? Sounded squeaky. And to this day, yeah, I still don't like it.
And when you see yourself on video, you know, the visual part, you won't like yourself either. Because I'm looking at you right now, and I don't particularly like it. You're punishing me with that look.
That's fine. Okay, easy there.
I'm kidding, obviously, because I love the hell out of you.
I love you too, Uncle Val.
But what I'm saying is that we, in our minds, form an image of ourselves, how we sound, how we look, And when we are caught on camera or on a microphone, we realized that we're not what we think we are.
It can cause things like body dysmorphia.
It
right?
can cause a lot of problems in life. One of the things that comes to my mind, for example, is that the development of anorexia, which is a disease. And some people, for whatever reason, they have this disease called anorexia. They look in the mirror and they think they're fat. And they're not fat. They're actually very, very skinny. I always tell people, listen to what somebody else tells you once in a while, for your friends, your relatives, because they actually see you the way you really are, not the way you think you are. If they say, hey, comb your hair this way or whatever, or lose a little weight or gain some weight, or whatever the case might be, wear elevator shoes, whatever you might need. Listen to them because they might be giving you some sound advice.
That's a good friend or a good... If they're nice about it, if they're gentle and like you need to maybe do a little more exercise. And yeah, that's a hard thing to tell people these days because people are sensitive.
I have a female friend, a lady, that when I met her the first time, she wears bangs like this, And I don't propose to tell people what to do, It was such a suggestion. But she had bangs here all the time. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling her that she reminds me of Mamie Eisenhower.
Who?
Because Mamie Eisenhower, President Eisenhower's wife.
Okay.
She always had bangs,
Okay.
The hair that comes right here. And I told her, you remind me of Mrs. Eisenhower. And she didn't like what I was telling her. I said, well, I don't want to look like Mrs. Eisenhower. I said, well, then remove the bangs because that's what you're looking like. And she did, and she looks much, much nicer. But for the most part, and people have told me a lot of things that are wrong with me, and they're probably right. Sometimes we're very stubborn and we will not change them. But getting back to the disease, some people, they look in the mirror and they think they're fat, and they're not fat. They're actually very skinny. Case in point that comes to my mind was Karen Carpenter. You're too young to know about Karen Carpenter. Karen Carpenter was a female partner of her brother. They had a group, a duo singing, and they were there's Karen Carpenter, very, very famous, and she died of anorexia. And every time
she died.
Yeah, she died a few years ago. And
how old was she?
You can tell. Oh, she was maybe 40.
Oh, that's too young.
And you can see some of those pictures where her face is so long and drawn and whatever. Look at
what's that picture with her in the Muppet Miss Piggy? What is that?
The right next to it, in a white dress.
And the black and white
Look
photo.
Look how skinny she was. Look at her.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, she died because she would not eat because she thought she was fat. Now, can you certainly you are not seeing a fat girl right there, do you?
This chick's a whale. I don't know.
She probably weighed under 100 pounds.
No, I'm joking. Yeah, she would be very skinny. For all the podcast listeners without the video, I mean, yeah.
And the opposite of that is some people are very heavy, and they think they're skinny.
Oh yeah, that can be a problem too.
And that's true. And they start wearing bigger and bigger dresses and pants and suits and whatever. And but they think they're not heavy, and they are. And their friends many times and their relatives will tell them, you need to lose a little weight. And they will not do it because they think they look fine, and they're not.
It's kind of this everything in moderation, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The key word that I have to say on this show, and I will say it to the day I die, which is going to be 30 years from now, is moderation. Everything in moderation. Don't get too heavy. Don't get too skinny. And eat. People say, well, am I supposed not to eat meat, or am I not supposed to eat fats or ice cream or whatever? Everything good, everything is in moderation. And there's another big star that plays Las Vegas, and she's very famous, and I happen to love her singing, and that's, what's her name? It's Canadian star. My goodness. And I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget her name. But let me see if I have it here. Let me see. Celine Dion. And she's been told many, many times that she's losing a lot of weight. And in the beginning, they thought that possibly she was losing her weight because she lost her husband. But it turns out that, and I'm not an expert on this subject. I just want to make that clarification. I'm not an expert, so don't write me a lot of letters and call me and try to bomb my house or something. But
if they do, I won't let you read them.
No. It's just an observation that I have made in my puny little mind. But Celine Dion, I've seen pictures of her lately, and she's so skinny. She looks like Carpenter. And people keep telling her, gain some weight. And she still won't eat.
That's tough. That's tough when people are... How can you approach... What would you do if your daughter or your son or someone close to you was in this position? How would you gently approach it? For a listener who may...
The problem is the approach is never gentle because they will not take it gently.
So
you tell them gently, but they will not accept it gently. They will rebel.
Should you tell them more than once?
Yes. Well, I don't tell them. I just suggest.
You just suggest.
You don't tell anybody anything. You suggest. And
what if it's like inviting them to come do something with you?
They won't come.
They won't come.
They won't come. I know as a naturopathic doctor and nutritional person that I know because I studied it, I could advise people what to eat, what not to eat, so they can lose or gain weight. The problem is that I've done it several times to people who are suffering from those problems, and they don't take your advice. They won't do it. So they want to stay in the status quo, and the status quo is either being skinny or being overweight.
Or the comfortability.
And they're comfortable. That's their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And if it is, and if they are, as long as they're not too skinny or too heavy, and if they're comfortable with what they are, that's fine with them. After all, they have to live with themselves, and I have to live with myself.
Have you ever had anorexia or an eating disorder?
How dare you ask me things like that? Don't you know that I'm perfect?
Oh, okay.
See, that's my image that I'm perfect,
Gotcha.
But I'm not. No, I never. Well, I'll tell you what I did do one time. I was jealous of the young guys like you who go to the gym and do a lot of exercises.
Me too, Uncle Val.
What?
Me too.
And they develop a six-pack.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a six-pack?
Hell no. I've been trying for 10 years. It keeps going back to the same.
Well, anyway, I did for a couple of weeks. I went to the gym, and I felt real good, and I got myself a six-pack.
At what point in your life?
Well, about 20 years ago. But
20 years ago?
Yeah.
At the age of, what the hell are you? You're
105?
At the age of 64, you went and got a six-pack, and you still have it?
I still have it.
Shut the heck. No way. I don't believe it.
I still have the six-pack.
Let's see it. Where is it?
Well, it's right here.
You motherfucker. You got it.
Well, there you are.
There's the
Were you impressed with my six-pack?
2 minutes late. Yeah, I'm impressed with the six-pack.
But anyway, that's my story, Morning Glory.
For anyone listening, he didn't show me anything on his stomach. It was a pack of beer.
That's right.
Yeah, Bud Light.
Well, it was supposed to
Bud
be
Light
a joke.
Specific.
You know, and when I travel all over the world, I used to talk to people about their habits concerning exercise or food or whatever.
And you drink the beer too, right? Sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Can actually, because this might be a little point for us. What kind of beer is it?
We're going to be advertising it.
Maybe we send a clip to the company.
This is Bud Light.
It's Bud Light.
But you know the way I drink beer now?
It's a teeny tiny bottle.
Exactly.
Oh, so you were lying about it. It's a tiny six-pack. It's not even.
Exactly.
Okay.
Again, you see, that's one of the things that people can do if they drink too much beer. Go from a regular 12 ounce or 16 ounce to a 7 ounce. I drink only a 7 ounce, and sometimes I don't even finish this thing.
Yeah,
So you cut down on your beer consumption by drinking a smaller bottle.
And then that way in the morning when you're hungover, you don't have to drink the rest that's been left over. You don't have to save those fallen soldiers if you've got a smaller bottle.
You get half of a hangover.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of a full hangover. Anyway, I was telling you about when I traveled Mexico, and I used to go and get. I used to like to study some of the tribes in Mexico, like Tarahumaras and some of those Aztecas and the Mayas or whatever. And I found them very interesting, also about their eating habits, because some of them have very good eating habits. I always wonder because how come they were so slender, so skinny? It turns out they eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. And one tribe in particular that I studied in Mexico, and they went by the name of the Wangas. And have you heard of them?
I have not heard of the Wangas.
There was a tribe in Mexico that I liked a lot. I stayed with them 3 or 4 days, and and why are you smiling?
Oh, I'm drinking water.
Oh, you're drinking water. Okay.
Yeah.
And this tribe called the Wangas,
Mm-hmm.
and I liked them very much. They were very nice to me, and I stayed in their village, and then I started to learn the names of the women and the men and the children and whatever. It turns out that the women, they were called the Chichiwangas, and the men were called the Chiliwangos. Very unusual name for the women, Chichiwangas and the Chiliwangos.
What were the children called?
I don't remember.
I don't get it.
I'm trying to keep a straight face, but it's very hard for me.
You're having hard. That is one of the hardest things for me to do. I don't know if I could ever act. I don't know how people keep a straight face. And in the face of something genuinely funny. Yeah.
Well, the other day I was watching this two actors, really.
Yeah?
Because I really admire actors a lot. Now, Marlon Brando, what he did, as amazing an actor as he was, one of his flaws, if you could call it a flaw, he would put little notes around the set on top of the sofas and somewhere where the camera will not watch him staring at those little notes. When he did The Godfather, I read this because I have this big book about The Godfather. He would put little notes. One of the times, if you notice one of the scenes that he's doing, Marlon Brando in The Godfather, he's looking at I think Al Pacino or something like that, and he kind of rubs the arm of the sofa like as if it has dust. Actually, he's looking at the notes. He goes like this, and people think he's taking the dust off of the sofa. But he was reading his lines.
Oh, yeah, that was my question. Are the notes lines or?
They're lines.
That's cheating. That's not professional.
That's cheating. You and I are not cheating, but we're not saying anything worthwhile, is it?
Are we cheating?
I don't know.
I don't have any lines. I just have an episode format here just to keep me on the rails. So.
But anyway, Marlon Brando used to do that, and I got off the subject. What were we talking about?
We were talking about this guy from The Godfather reading notes, being able to keep a straight face amid acting.
Oh, I was going to tell you that the other day I saw two actors, and one of them was crying on the set. Oof. And I said to myself, if I was acting and I had to cry, I don't know if I could cry just on cue like that. Possibly I can laugh on cue, but I cannot cry on cue. And then I said to myself, if I wanted to cry on a set, what could I do to make myself cry? And I said, I know what I would do. I would get an onion in my hand, and I would pretend that I was rubbing my eye. I say, really? Is it true? Oh, my God. I would take my glass and I'd rub like that. Oh, my God.
No,
really?
Don't do that. Don't put onion in your eye.
Well, get close to my nose, because onions will make you cry. And I would put onions so I could cry.
Yeah.
Or I would think about you and I would start crying right away.
Oh, gee, thanks. Yeah. That's yeah. Okay. Yeah, and another mistake too is always wash your hands after cutting jalapenos, because that reminded me.
That's correct.
Touching your eyes, even taking a piss.
Yeah,
that was a mistake.
That will do it. You know, when I was young and good looking, and I'm just good looking now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, scratch that off. No, I'm an old man now, but I acted a couple of times at the Albuquerque Little Theater, and that's how many of the stars who appeared there came and did my show, like Vivian Vance from I Love Lucy, from Bill Daly from whatever he was doing, and some of those stars, Don Knotts from the Andy Griffith Show, they came and did my show, and they were acting at the Albuquerque Little Theater. And I did a couple of plays myself when I was young. And it's very hard to act. People think it's easy. It is not.
Yeah.
It is not. I had a very small parts, but I still did them. But, oh, my God, I went through sheer terror just to do those scenes that I had to do, because you have to really get used to it. When I was doing TV, for example, a lot of people asked me, "It looks so easy for you." I said, it was not in the beginning. It was easy later on, after 6, 7, or 8, or 10 years. It became fairly easy. But in the beginning, it was very hard, too, because like I said in the beginning, I didn't know what I looked like, and I didn't know how I sounded. And when I would go home and see the replay, I would sit there and I kept looking at myself and I said, "Oh my goodness, what am I subjecting the people to?"
So
it was terrible.
Maybe a really good piece of advice for someone like me or another person out there who's trying to start their own show. I might have to go stop the dog. Poor dog. Would be to rewatch yourself and listen to yourself, to criticize yourself, right? Not in the sense of vanity, like, "Oh, look how awesome I am. That was an awesome performance." No, you should be looking for your flaws.
If you
right?
do that, then you're defeating yourself.
Okay.
But most people, most actors, when I interviewed some of the big actors, like Anthony Quinn, for example, or people of that sort, they tell me all the time that they don't even watch their movies. In the beginning, I thought that, no, that's not true. I mean, an actor makes a movie and then he will not watch his own movie. And later on, I came to find out that most of the time it is true. Some of those people will not watch their own movies because they really don't like themselves. Now, the general public likes them, and they're famous, people like Marlon Brando or Shirley MacLaine or whomever. But they themselves, sometimes they don't like themselves. They always think that the performance was not good enough. Even dancers or musicians or whatever. So therefore, some don't even look at themselves. When I started on TV, I would tape the show from 1 to 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and they would play it back at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoons. And I would go home and I'd sit on my sofa and pop me a beer and watch my own show. And I would just turn it off sometimes. I said, I don't want to watch myself because I thought I was terrible. And as the years went by, the Val de la O show, by the way, the Val de la O show was in Spanish, and later on it was nationally syndicated. It's
I like these little subtle things. For the podcast listeners, as he's starting to describe his show, he switches from looking at me to the camera because it's an important thing, too, because he's engaging the audience at this point. And this is something I'm trying to focus on, too, is looking at the camera when I'm talking to the audience. I've watched myself for the first test episodes, and I'm looking up in the corner. I'm looking up at the lights, and it's a very awkward thing to see when you're trying to engage the audience and you're talking up to something that's not there.
You learn those little things by being on many, many, many times. You really cannot say, okay, I'm going to do this and that the next time. It has to come naturally. And because the camera has to like you.
And the microphone.
You've given me camera has to like you, the microphone has to like you, and ultimately the audience has to like you. And if the audience doesn't like you, you're gone. You're gone. Because you have to appeal to the masses.
So, well, what if you want to entertain a niche market? Like a specific type of audience, like a tiny audience. Maybe not the masses, but a niche market.
Well, that's true. The podcast supposedly is that type of market.
Some podcasts definitely pick their niche.
Because you told me the last time that people listen to podcasts sometimes even more so than they see it on.
It's the length of them. There's 1 hour, 2 hours, and it's hard to sit down for that long. A lot of people are busy.
Well, people can sit to watch a movie. Why can't they see a podcast?
Right. It's just form of media.
It's whatever habits they may have, but be as it may, but you still have to. You improve yourself by seeing yourself, and it takes time. For example, I remember one time I used to watch myself on TV, and I had the habit of sticking my arm like that. I don't know why, but I did, like this. My elbow, my left elbow. And what happened was, when the camera was on me, the camera would cut off my elbow.
Your phone's vibrating. I can hear it in the.
Well.
There we go.
Okay, well, it's off now.
Okay.
Let me turn it off completely. Let's see. How do you turn the phone off? Oh, yeah, I think so.
My apologies, too. I think I'm trying to work with my hound.
No.
So I'm going to make sure she's not howling. Oh, goodness gracious me.
Well, can I talk to myself? I'll talk to the audience, because after all, he's not that important anyway. When I was on TV, I used to have this habit of sticking my elbow like this, and the camera would cut off my elbow, and it looked like as if my arm was amputated, and it was sticking off like this. And when I would go home and watch the replay of my show, I said, that's horrible. You cannot see my elbow, only this part of the arm. And also, here's another thing. Most people, if not all, have a good side and a bad side.
How do you find out?
By looking at yourself over and over and over and over again. And after a while, you have a good side and a bad side. At least you think you do, and most people are right. And some people don't have a good side at all. And some people have the right or the left, whatever it may be, but...
And this can be important all the way down to a photo in your resume, right?
Exactly.
Like if you're trying to get a job or network, you may not be in film at all, and you might be sabotaging your own image simply by taking a picture on the wrong side or the wrong angle, up or down.
You're right, Taco Breath.
Yeah.
So you with time, you're going to learn. You become your own specimen. You become your own experiment, and you start to listen to yourself. And after a while, believe it or not, you will like yourself. Because you need to start to liking yourself as well. You cannot be super critical, because none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. But you need to put out to the people and to the audience the best of you. Some actor said one time that the only thing he owes to the public is a good performance. He doesn't owe them details about his private life or et cetera, et cetera. All he owes to the people is a good performance. And I think that's right.
That's his role as an entertainer.
Well, his role is to entertain.
Right.
A singer is to sing and an actor is to act, but they don't have to know how many times you were married or divorced, or whether you smoke weed or you drink beer or whatever the case might be.
But it's fascinating to know.
Well, people are curious about you. The more famous you become, the more curious they are about you.
Have you ever had paparazzis or people unsolicited attention?
As a matter of fact, I did one time in Las Vegas. Well, in other places as well. I remember my daughter, Cristal, who happens to live in Arizona now, and she watches this podcast all the time.
Hi, Cristal.
Cristal. And I have three daughters. Cristal, who's my second daughter, Novella, my oldest daughter, and Carmela, my third daughter. And I love them dearly. Those are my daughters, And but Cristal, when she was a little girl one time, I remember that we were at Montgomery Ward's, and we were shopping, my wife and I and my three kids. And she came to me and she said, "Daddy, there's a woman following us here at the store." I said, "Where?" Whoa. And that lady over there, she says, "She's following us." So I looked up there, and we started to kind of keep our eye on that lady. And sure enough, she was following us. And we thought maybe she was the store policeman, because maybe they thought we were shoplifting or something. But it turns out she was a fan. She was following me because she recognized me at the store, and she didn't have the courage to approach me and ask me for an autograph or a story or something like that.
So it was harmless? It wasn't?
It was harmless. It was harmless.
Okay.
And the lady, or whomever she was, was a real nice person. But she finally got and talked to me, and she said, "Are you Val de la O?" I said, "Yes, I am." And I don't know what transpired after that, but that was the case. Also, when we were in Juarez, Mexico, one time, we used to stay at this beautiful hotel called El Camino Real, and my family and I used to go to El Camino Real and spend weekends as mini vacations. And I used to take my kids, Cristal, Novella, and Carmela, and my wife and I, my wife Kalaya, and we would stay the whole weekend there at Camino Real. And one time I was there at the Camino Real when this lady, we went to the Mercado, and this lady was following me around. And again, we noticed that this person was everywhere that I stood, she was about a few feet away. And she pretended that she was looking at the curios or the food or whatever it was. Finally, she approached me and she said, "Are you so-and-so?" I said, "Yes, I am." And she says, "What are you doing in Juarez, Mexico?" And I said, "Well, we're vacationing." And she said, "I'm a reporter for El Fronterizo," which was a very famous newspaper in Juarez, Mexico.
Wow.
And she says, "We watch you all the time here in Juarez on TV."
Okay.
And in fact, my show was popular in Juarez because it was seen 3 times per week. It would come in from Channel 26 from El Paso, Channel 5 from Juarez, and Channel 18 from Las Cruces, I believe.
Whereas here in Albuquerque, they gave you 1 per week on a
Just
Saturday
one per week.
morning.
At the NBC station, KOB, my show was there. Although in the beginning I was on Channel 7 and Channel 13.
Okay.
But anyway, in Juarez I became very popular because they saw me 3 times a week. And this lady was following me around. She told me she was a reporter for El Fronterizo in Juarez. And she asked me if I would give her an interview. And I said, sure. So we arranged it for the following day. And she showed up at the Camino Real Hotel. And she interviewed me and took some notes and took some pictures. Well, the following day, I opened El Fronterizo. Oh, my goodness. I had pictures of me all over the newspaper.
Damn.
I mean, because in Mexico, when they like you, they like you.
That's a pleasant
And when they don't like you, they'll shoot you.
Okay. Are guns legal in Mexico to carry around like here?
Maybe not, but who cares?
Okay, I guess that's the mentality.
You know, they kill a lot of reporters in Mexico. If they don't like you, they kill you.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a semi-joke, but it is true. They kill a lot of reporters in Mexico.
It's a common theme around the world.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's well, a reporter exposes themselves to a lot of dangers, and
real reporters, that go out and do the dirty work.
By the way, if you want, would you like to have a real famous guest? Not me, but because I'm not that famous. But would you like to have Obama as your guest?
It would be cool if we could get Obama in here.
I think I could get him for you.
If you really think you could get, is this the Barack Obama, former president of the United States that you're talking about?
No, not really.
Oh man, he's going to be a different Obama.
What I would even like to meet him, but I have never met Obama.
Okay.
The only Obama that I have met was when you go to Las Vegas, you see the wax. What do you call them? The
Wax Museum?
The Wax Museum, and there is Obama standing there.
Yeah.
And I would like to meet him. He seems to be a real nice fellow.
I mean, the wax, yep, that's close enough.
But
right?
Can you imagine having Obama here as your guest? Or
I feel like I'd need to make it nicer, you know?
No, not necessarily. No? Obama seems to be a very humble man, even though he's not, he's wealthy now because, well, he was president of the United States. And he was the only black president, and that's an outstanding thing. He happens to be very charming. Whatever I see of him on TV, I happen to like.
Gotcha.
Now, he was not a perfect president either. They all make mistakes, but I liked him. But I also liked Bush, H.W. Bush. What's the name? H.W. Bush. And I liked Ronald Reagan a lot. He was, he was a former actor.
Yes,
and I liked him. I like most of our presidents. By the way, our presidents have a lot of faults as well. The other day I was talking to
people.
I was talking to my family about presidents, and I told them that I have noticed something about presidents. The good presidents, most of them. Again, I'm talking in generalities. I'm not talking specifically, but in general. The good presidents were not loyal to their wives.
Okay, that might just have been just like to be a president, you gotta be quite an aggressive mentality of I'm gonna go get that. That's a very high status position, and you've got to be very
and they
determined.
got their cuties sometimes.
And I think with that comes women, and men are just gonna do what they're gonna do.
Well, a person in that position, a lot of people gravitate towards them, including women, if they're a male president.
Yeah, women will use power too. I mean, people are people. Yeah.
People.
What?
people who like people. Remember that song?
No, I don't.
You're so young.
I appreciate
That's Barbara Streisand's big hit. People who like people.
I also lived under a rock.
But anyway, presidents. I was the observation that I was making at that moment was that it seems like the good presidents we have had, and the conversation started this way: who are the best presidents? When they're rated, who was the best and the worst presidents so far? And the best one, number one, was Abraham Lincoln. The second was George Washington. And the third was Franklin Roosevelt. Well, I don't know about Abraham Lincoln, but I know that kind of. But the third was.
You don't remember Abraham Lincoln as a president?
I went to school with him, but
you went to school with him. Okay.
But I don't remember him. But anyway, I don't know about Abraham Lincoln, but he was a playboy or not. But they say that George Washington was, and
I don't know. Abraham was a tall guy, long extremities.
That's true. Well, I don't know that either.
He was probably slinging that D just like anyone else.
I don't know. And the third one was Franklin Roosevelt. Now, the interesting story about Roosevelt is that even though he was crippled, he had polio, he had a mistress most of his life. And everybody knew it, including Mrs. Roosevelt. So I'm telling you, the point that I'm trying to make is the good presidents, the ones that were our outstanding presidents, according to the public, were the presidents that were having affairs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at the ones that did not have affairs or supposedly did not have affairs, and they were not very good presidents.
Maybe it was just kind of the perception of how history was recorded.
It's possible, yes.
And not that we endorse being unfaithful or that we endorse having multiple mistresses. It's just that people make mistakes no matter how good they are, right?
We're just talking about human behavior because we're all ruled by human behavior ourselves as well. But no, we're not passing judgment or anything like that. It's an observation that I was making.
Right.
That the good presidents seem to be the ones that were womanizers, so to speak.
It's an interesting connection. Why do you think that this happens to so many people? Why do you think that cheating and being unloyal and unfaithful, infidelity, why do you think that lots of people do that? What's the reasons?
Well, there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of ideas about that. I was reading a book one time, and this psychologist or somebody was saying that men was not born to be monogamist, or people were not born to be monogamist. Think of this. A man marries a girl, maybe in her 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. Can you imagine the woman or the man living for 70 years, being married to that person, and never having contact with another person?
Yeah, that's a tough way to live.
And they do. There are people.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy Carter, supposedly, him and what's her name, Rosalind. There's a president that it's not rated very, very high, and he was morally he's been a real good president, and I admired him for that. I really admire Mr. Carter, President Carter, but it was not known for him to be having an affairs like, for example, Roosevelt or Bill Clinton or whatever. But yet he's not rated as a good president either, according to society or according to the American people. So I don't know. I'm not an expert in none of that stuff. In fact, I'm not an expert in anything. I just happen to be a big mouth guy that's doing a podcast with my favorite By the way, who are you? Nephew? What are you? You're my brother's grandson.
That is correct.
So what does that make you to me?
In English, a nephew. I mean, you would be
I call you my nephew.
A great uncle. Yeah, we call
I
me
call
your
you my
grandson.
nephew because, I admire you a lot.
Well,
I really
thank
do.
you.
And you and Ryan.
Ryan's on another level. He's in another country right now.
Where?
He's in Central America. He's in Colombia. I'm not going to say the city or what he's working on because he's about to start a new business and he's playing with cryptocurrencies.
Can we call him right now?
Can we call him right now? We could try. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no. He works from home, like remote. He's in an Airbnb right now. He just got a new job writing software for a company, and he's starting his own business. He's helping us with this one over here. Yeah, he's on some other stuff right now. But yeah.
Well, Brian is very brilliant, and so are you, and I'm semi-brilliant, but I'm fading fast.
Well,
if you don't give me something to eat, give me a fortune cookie so I can eat something. Cause
you've got the mallet there.
That's right.
I'll let you tap it.
Okay, let's do the mallet thing. There we are. Okay, open the fortune cookie.
One day it's going to be cold in here and that thing's going to crack. All right, we're going to get some new fortune cookies because we've had some repeat offenders here. One who would trade liberty for security deserves neither. Benjamin Franklin.
So repeat it, please.
One who would trade their freedom for safety deserves neither.
I believe that.
So it's like if
one who would trade
liberty for security, you don't deserve either. You don't deserve to be free or safe.
You're right. Well, being free that's what makes this country so great. We're free. Right now we're doing a podcast. You and I can say almost anything, and we cannot get prosecuted because we're protected by the Constitution. We're supposed to be free, and we are free.
We're supposed to be. There's big news. Even though we can say certain things, there's lots of momentum on this cancel culture, trying to take big famous people down because they're going against the mainstream narrative. We don't have to name any names, but I think anyone who's up to date on news knows the guy right now that they're trying to take down. But it's super fascinating. Even though you do have free speech, I mean, you could systematically be taken off of all the internet platforms.
Well, there's a limit to free speech.
What do you think the limits are?
Well, you cannot cry fire in a crowded theater. That's one of the most popular ones.
Oh, that's actually yeah, you can't intentionally defame someone's business. That's an illegal part of
there's things.
Speech.
There's a limit to your liberties as well. You have to stop at a red light when you're driving in traffic, because that protects society and yourself as well.
Right, but we're talking about the speech, not red
speech.
Lights.
Well, there's certain things you shouldn't say. For example, I restrained myself on this program, and when I was on TV for 25 years, from saying indecent things, vulgar things, risque things, only because it doesn't accomplish anything.
It was a different time back then too. You had
even now it is a little bit. It's not as much, but I remember the first time I went to a movie many years ago, and the actress mentioned the F word.
Was there an audible gasp in the theater?
It was. Oh my! I couldn't believe it. I almost walked out. I said, "How can they say that word on the screen?" And even now, I listen to some comedians. There's a particular comedian that I happen to admire a lot. I like him, but he uses the F-bomb, the word, so much, and other words as well, that it kind of bothers me a little bit. I say he doesn't have to use that word so much. I mean, I've used it myself, but I try not to use it. I want to use it because I think that the F word is a release word. It's a release word because if you are full of anger, you're full of tension, Or instead of hitting somebody, you call them the F word, and it's a release. It releases the buildup of anger that you have within your body. So it's a good word. All words are good. All words are good, including that one. But don't overuse it. Again, the word moderation kicks in. You can use it. Nobody's going to tell you not to use it, but don't use it every other sentence or whatever. Don't use it because it offends people, and then it loses its meaning.
There's a story you've got about how your wife never used it and then used it once, and it had
my wife was
density to it that shocked you.
Exactly. My wife one time. My wife would never use the F word, never, and at least not in front of me. And one day, many years ago, I was sitting at the kitchen table, and she was washing the dishes. And she was talking about some situation she was in, and all of a sudden, she turns to me and she says, I don't want to say it, but she said, F them. And I said, what did you say? He said, F them, you know.
She was talking about a third party.
Exactly. She was talking about a third party. And I said, what did you say? I said, I've never heard you say that word before. And she said, well, I don't care. Again, she repeated it for the third time. And instead of, I found it very comical. I found it amusing because it was coming from her.
You didn't take her seriously.
No. Well, she was a very good person. My wife was not perfect. None of us are. But she was a nice woman, a nice mother, a nice wife, a nice sister. My wife was a beautiful person.
I thought so as well. I wish I knew her more.
I miss her because she died 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And she was the mother of my 3 daughters, Novella, Cristal, Carmela, and her name was Kalaya. And once in a while I will go to the cemetery and I visit her. There's nothing to see except a little plaque there. But
do you think that's important to visit the dead?
My father used to say it is. He says, there's a saying that you are not forgiven, you're not forgotten as long as your name is mentioned by somebody.
That makes sense.
So right now we mention Abraham Lincoln.
Well, what is your father's name? Let's not forget.
Ralph delao.
Yeah, and that's my dad's name.
And your dad's name is Ralph also.
Yeah, they anglicized it. It's supposed to be Raphael with an F, but they changed it in paper to an LPH.
And when your dad was a little boy, we used to call him Ralphie.
Ralphie.
And that's the way we distinguished him from my father, Ralph. And actually, my father was not the original Ralph. His grandfather was named Rafael.
Okay.
Rafael de la O. Then my father was named after him. Then your father was named after my father.
Were you named after any of the male ancestors? Were there any former Valentinos?
Yes and no.
Yes.
Very interesting story.
And it is Valentino, right?
It is Valentino.
Okay.
Valentino is Valentin. Valentin is Spanish.
Okay.
Valentino is Valentin, but in Italian.
Okay.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
My mother, when I was born, my mother wanted to name me Rodolfo, after Rodolfo Valentino, the movie star that had died many, many years before. Rudolph Valentino, they call him. And my mother wanted to name me Rudolph. And my father got angry for something or jealous or whatever. And he said, we're not going to name him Rodolfo. And then, so they compromised because my father had an uncle that he admired and loved. His name was Valentin.
Okay.
So he says, in compromise, we're going to name him Valentin. And my mother agreed. But when the priest and when the doctor came over to fill my birth certificate, you watch this. My mother was a sneaky broad. When the doctor came in to fill the birth certificate, and when I did my first baptismal, and they filled out the document for the baptismal, my mother said, put an O after Valentin. So I ended up with Valentino, which is even more prominent than Rodolfo.
More prominent?
Well, more known. Rudolph Valentino. And there's a lot of Valentinos that were named after the movie star, including a brother-in-law that I have, Rodolfo Valentino. He was named Rodolfo Valentino Castillo. That was his last name. But in my case, I ended up with the name Valentino, which is Valentin in Italian. So I have an Italian name, so to speak, Valentino.
Do you think the name played into your personality? Do you think having the name Valentine played into almost a romantic aspect? Do you think having that name may have given you the idea that you're more romantic or more maybe to put yourself out there on TV? Do you think that's
not necessarily, but it did help when I started on TV.
Okay.
Because what happened was that if you Google my name, that I'm the only Val de la O in the whole wide world so far that I have found out. Now, there are some Val de la O's, but their first name is something else. For example, my grandson is named Omar Valentino de la O.
Gotcha.
But he's still Omar. And I told him one day, if you ever go into movies, you have a movie star's name, Omar de la O.
Do you think that's it plays an important part in a person's life, that first name?
I think it does.
I
think it does. Can you imagine your name being Gorilla?
Could you imagine it being like Ralph the Gorilla? What? Yeah, that'd be a terrible. Well, I mean, men's first names are often made into derogatory terms. It's just like, geez, this guy's a dick. He makes me sick. I'm gonna Ralph. I'm gonna go head over to the John and jack off about it. You know, there's all these men's names are after gross derogatory things. So I'm thinking, yeah, if you name your kid something prestigious or good, that might have a good effect on them.
Well,
but maybe not. Who knows?
When people used to interview me many years ago, like in New York or Chicago or Las Vegas or Albuquerque or wherever it was, I have a box full of interviews from famous newspapers all over the country. Many times they would ask me, is your name a fabricated name? Because like Tony Curtis, for example, the movie star, his name was Schwartz. What was his first name?
This is common, yeah.
Tony Curtis. But his name was something Schwartz. I don't remember.
Freddie Mercury was another one. He got his name legally changed.
So many of the big stars
Bruno
nowadays
Mars.
have invented names. And they thought that I had come up with the name Val de la O.
Curious.
But it's really my name. Actually, Val is short for Valentino. Val de la O. And funny how it came about. When I was doing TV in the beginning, we did not have the luxury of videotape. Videotape came in later in the 60s. And so therefore, we had to do all our commercials either live. In fact, most of them were live. Or if you recorded them, they would be in 16 millimeter film. So we had to write cue sheets and big old sheets like that. We used to call them idiot sheets. And they would, when I started to do commercials, they would do, it was very tedious to write the whole name Valentino.
Yeah. So
they shortened it to Val.
Makes sense.
And before you know it, they were changing it to V because we were trying to save space in the cue sheets. And after a while, they were putting VD instead of Val de la O. They went from Valentino to Val and then to just V. And I told them, don't put V too much because VD is the name of a disease.
Yeah, my initials T.
Hey, VD, come over here. So wait a minute, is it venereal disease or what is it?
That's not a good abbreviation. What's your middle name? Or is that a secret?
I don't have a middle name.
Whoa, you don't have a middle name?
No. I don't need more than two names.
Yeah.
Does Liberace need a middle name?
I don't know.
Does Cher need a middle name?
I don't know.
Does Elvis need a middle name? I don't need a middle name.
You're right. And this is important, too, because I like to try and bring a little bit of this back to business, marketing, and because you've had the experience on things in media and also owning your own shop. But from a branding and marketing perspective, it's very important to have that name that no one else has. And unfortunately, our name may be a little bit muddied up with some other podcast names around it. However, we're using your name and my name tagged in with all of the title episodes for the algorithms and the SEO, the search engine optimizers. But yeah, I mean, your advice is probably to to stick with shorter names or your own name if you're starting a
No,
company?
it doesn't matter. I think that movie stars, for the most part, famous people, have unusual names. And sometimes they came up, Bernie Schwartz, that was the name of Tony Curtis. And a lot of people have, if you get a World Almanac, and I read it all the time because I buy it every year, you'll see the original names of many of these movie stars or personalities. It turns out that many have changed their names.
Do you think this is a good strategic move for someone?
For the business they were in, yes.
Okay.
Because they wanted to attract the masses of people, admirers and fans and whatever. And who would think about Bernie Schwartz? It's Tony Curtis sounds much better.
Yeah, it does. Something about it.
Now, some people have a natural name they were born with. I was fortunate to have my name Val de la O, and it kind of clicked with the public. And I was the only one because actually it was good for me because in the beginning when I started my TV show, my show was not Val de la O Show. It turns out that I had to give it another name. And then I got a call from an attorney in California. Oof. And he said, you better take your name off. He said, because we watch your show here in Los Angeles. And we're going to file copyright violations on you because you're using our name. There was already a show in California.
What was it called? Val de la O
Horizonte Musical. Horizonte Musical. So I said to myself, I need to rename my show.
Yeah, okay.
So what am I going to name my show? And I kept thinking about it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he says, oh, why don't you name it your name? They cannot sue you if you can use your name because you're the owner of your name. And then I started thinking, well, the Bob Hope Show is Bob Hope, the star of the show. The Dean Martin Show was Dean Martin, et cetera, et cetera. So I said to myself, well, I'll name it the Val de la O Show. And people seemed to respond to it and like it, and I was on the air for 25 years.
May I have that bottle of water, please?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. So when it's most appropriate to use your own name?
Whenever you think it's appropriate. Now, if you really want to become famous, I told this guy one time as a kind of a joke, but it's true. If you want to be famous, really, really famous, suddenly and rapidly, change your name to Coca-Cola.
I'm pretty sure you'd get sued by
Coca-Cola. And then you'll see your name.
And then you'll see your name.
You'll see your name in China and Coca-Cola. Drink Coca-Cola.
It's a hack of life, yeah.
I knew this family. Their last name was Duck. And they named their first little boy Donald.
Oh. See, again, what do you think does to that kid? What does that do? Do you think that would play into his insecurities, or do you think maybe that help him develop a sense of humor? That's naming your kid Donald Duck. He's gonna get picked on.
Well, there are people who are named Donald.
Well, right, but yeah, that's a bad one. I read a book called Freakonomics, and it's quite old. I forgot the author, but it goes over some interesting names. We can open one of those in a second.
No.
Orangelo and Lamangelo were two brothers, and the way it was spelled was orange jello and lemon jello. Yeah, those are pretty bad names. Another one was Shatid, but it was spelled shithead. Yeah, no, these are real names. Let me see if I can think of another one. Those are just the three off the top of my head. Yeah. Superman, I think someone named their kid legally Superman on paper. Yeah.
There are people that go to the registrar's office to register the kid's name, and they are not allowed to do it. They're turned down.
Where? People try and give their kids certain names.
And a very unusual name.
Frank Zappa, I think one of his kids' name is Moon Unit. Can we fact check this, Cameron? Because he's got Frank Zappa is just a weird. Have you heard of him?
No.
Yeah, probably for good reason. He's a very bizarre jazz musician with some pretty explicit thematic lyrics. He's a weird dude.
Oh. Frank Zappa.
That is my bad. That shouldn't be going on. Oh.
Well, isn't he a famous Frank Zappa? Isn't he a famous movie director?
I am sorry, everybody. He's not a famous movie director. Maybe he is, but as you can see, the first thing that comes up is his Spotify and Apple Music. So he's a musician. He's a jazz musician. We definitely shouldn't put on any of his music because, one, YouTube's been flagging copyright things, and two, he says some pretty gnarly things some of the time. Yeah, but one of his kids' name is Moon Unit, right?
I'm a big fan. Talking back about the words that I'm a big fan of Bill Maher. I think he's very intelligent in many ways. The Bill Maher Show. Have you ever seen Bill Maher?
Yes.
But he loves the F word. He uses it over and over and over again.
It is versatile. You can use it in a lot of different ways, grammatically.
And it's a good word. There's nothing wrong with the word if you use it once in a while. It's like putting salt in your food. You don't want to put the whole salt shaker. If you once in a while you put a little pinch of salt in your food, that's going to be good. It adds flavor to the food. I think the F word, in a way, adds flavor to whatever you're discussing. Like I said, in my humble opinion, the F word is a release word. If you get real angry and you finally tell somebody, F you, whatever, that means you're releasing the anger that you have within you that could possibly lead you to something else, to shoot that person or to hit him or whatever. So it's a release word. But to use it every other sentence, I don't like it. That's me.
And it's if you're trying to do something like this podcast or a mainstream show, it's definitely something to be cognizant of.
Well, you have to be a good person. You have to remind you that children and women and men and little grannies, grandmothers and grandfathers or whatever, they're listening to you, hopefully, and you don't want to offend anybody. Why? Why would you want to offend? To begin with, we probably have 2 or 3 listeners in the totality of our show, and if we offend those 3 people, we're not going to have any listeners.
This is true, but offensive stuff do get views.
Well, it attracts people, but
people
eventually,
like offensive stuff these days.
Eventually, it ricochets towards you, and it.
Yeah, we don't want to. Put that
we
on
are self. Do you know that we're self-destructive?
Humans or you and I particularly?
All humans.
All humans.
We
are
self-destructive. I've studied again, not a lot, but I'm familiar with people very famous like Elvis Presley, for example, or people who become very, very famous and very rich and very powerful in many ways, and these people self-destruct. In fact, many years ago, I was doing this study, and I'm not sure if it's correct or not, but if I can remember correctly, within ourselves, this article said that we have a destructive gene within us, and this gene is there to destroy us. And when we get very volatile, or when we get very controversial, or we do things that are out of the norm, so to speak, eventually this gene will reactivate within our body and destroy us. I was thinking the other day about Elvis Presley, for example. He got into drugs. He was a tremendous talent, wonderful singer. He was so famous and so popular, he would fill stadiums by himself. I read a book one time where he went to, I think it was Houston or somewhere, and they took him the day before to the stadium where he was going to perform. And I think it seated like 70 or 80,000 people.
Could you imagine if his record label let him go outside of the United States? They screwed him over.
Oh, my goodness.
They kept him in the U.S. because they didn't want to lose control.
If he had gone to Europe, he never went to Europe. Never went to Europe.
No. His actual management screwed him over. Yeah, to any musicians performing out there, read your contracts if you're getting ready to sign something with the label. I mean, today is different because we have the internet. You don't really need one if you can gain your own momentum on your internet. But back in the day, it was so easy to just swindle someone like Elvis. Oh, it would have been awesome if he could have gone elsewhere in the world.
Exactly. And getting back to the story of the stadium,
yeah,
whatever city it was, I think it was Houston, but I could be wrong. But he went to the center of the stadium, and he looked around the stadium the day before, and of course it was empty. And he saw like 70 or 80,000 seats around it like this. And he said, oh my goodness, do they really expect me to fill this stadium? And he did.
That's awesome.
So to have that power and that popularity, is awesome. But he self-destroyed himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many famous people will self-destroy eventually because the ego destroys them, and
super common.
And whatever, they just self-destroy. And I was talking about the gene that supposedly we have within ourselves. And we also have a gene that supposedly also destroys our body. It actually decomposes our body. When we die, this gene is in the liver or somewhere, and it just there dormant. And then when you die, the moment that you die, the gene is activated and it starts to decompose your body. I was talking to a mortician one time and an embalmer. He told me that the body starts to decompose within about 5 to 10 minutes after the body dies. And I asked him, how do you know that? He said, well, when we pick up bodies, he says, we notice a little black dot, like a little on the right side of the body or in the colon area. And that's where he starts to decompose the body.
Oh,
and
so the decomposition happens from
exactly.
a
Starts right away after
you.
you die, within a few minutes.
Okay.
And supposedly it's triggered by some kind of an enzyme. I'm not sure about that, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, another creepy thing about bodies is that the air might still be in the lungs too. So sometimes the movement of the bodies in the moratoriums or the morgues, like they'll just breathe, and just because the air passes through the vocal cords, it sounds like they might be talking. So people working at a morgue for the first time might think that the person's still alive. So weird things happen to the human body after we die.
Well, but we don't die right away. People think that because the heart stops, normally they judge your death by when they put the stethoscope on you. The moment your heart stops beating, that's the moment that you die. But that is not true, because the brain still has about a 4 or 5 minute supply of oxygen. Until your oxygen is depleted, that's when you really die. Otherwise, you're not dead yet. So be very careful when a person is declared dead, because that person could possibly hear you and might even see you for the next 4 or 5 minutes. So think of the guillotine when somebody chopped somebody's head. The head can still be alive when it rolls down.
Hey, yo, bruh, keep blinking, and so I know you're alive, and then when you stop blinking, I'll stop the timer. This is really how they did it.
That's a good story. That's a good story.
No, that's how they would measure it back in the day. Keep blinking, and then when you stop blinking,
that's true.
That's when the brain stops.
When my wife died, I was devastated with the death of my wife, and I'm still am in a way. But when my wife died, the nurse had her stethoscope on her chest, and she was looking at the clock because she had to declare her dead at the precise moment. And she died, according to her, on a Sunday at 3:15 in the afternoon. But she made a statement right before that, when she was waiting for the heart to stop beating. She turned to me and she says, at this moment, she says, she's negotiating with God. And that, I have never forgotten that. At this moment, she says, she is negotiating with God. And if what they say is true, the moment that you die, you face God. Whatever.
There's a lot of accounts of NDEs, near-death experiences. It seems to be a common thing. Almost how you were saying that you were smelling perfume recently after her death. A lot of people experience signs within the first week that their loved one goes, and that a lot of people that almost die but then are resuscitated, they are claimed to have died at that certain time by the doctor, but they can be resuscitated. They have this perception of like, yo, I was in the room. I could see what you guys were doing. Like, it's not just a one-time thing. Lots of people experience these near-death experiences. So
what happens when you die, this is my opinion, is that you go from being physical to being spiritual. And that's why I think we cannot see dead people. We cannot see their spirits. We may be able to feel them. We may be able to detest, and maybe they send us messages or something, but we cannot see them because we're spiritual. We cannot see we're physical.
So you think ghosts
I can see
are
you because
around
you're
us?
physical and I'm physical.
You think ghosts and spirits are around us? Do you think they can like interact with the physical world? You know, like
It's
knocking something
possible.
off a table?
It's possible. I don't know anything. I'm not an expert, again, in anything, but it's possible that I was talking to this guy that supposedly knows more about it. He says that they hang around for a while, maybe a day, a week, or whatever. All I know is that in my case, and it's not unique, when my wife died, I was devastated. And I remember that I used to walk into one room of my house to the other, and I had her picture on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was completely devastated. I was crying, and I was lonely. I lived by myself in the house because I lost my family. They went to their homes, and I had to stay in my home by myself, and I have a big house. And as I passed by her picture, must have been about 12 midnight or whatever, I told you before, I had this perfume that it was emanating from her picture.
Ryan actually asked if anyone had been over at your house visiting, that maybe one of your family members might have sprayed it.
No.
So,
I raised all the possibilities of discrediting my story to myself, because I'm one of the biggest disbelievers in that sort of thing. But it happened to me. Even I cannot believe it many times. I went and asked my priest, because I'm a Catholic, what he thought about it. And he says, I believe it.
Have you thought about doing mushrooms again since we talked about
I've never done mushrooms.
I know you never did it, but we talked about it. You were very curious the other day.
I was curious, but just because I'm curious doesn't mean I want to do it.
You don't want to do it?
No, not at my age.
No?
The wildest thing that I did at my age is about every 2 or 3 weeks I have a mini Coke.
A mini
or
Coke
a mini
or
beer.
a mini beer. Would you try a pot brownie?
A what?
A pot brownie?
A pot brownie.
Yeah, like marijuana in the form of a cookie.
I did one time. This guy gave me a pink candy, and I didn't know that it had marijuana. So what I ate, but I was suspecting it had marijuana in it. So what I did, I cut it in about 3 parts, in 3 pieces, and I ate just a small piece, and I got the darndest headache you ever seen in your life.
Yeah, it was probably
he told me that
poorly.
It told me it would help me sleep.
It was maybe homemade and poorly
It's
extracted.
It's possible. And I'll tell you, I got a darndest headache with it, and I only ate 1/3 of the candy.
I think you'd have a different experience with some professionally, medically, or recreationally produced cannabis. I really do. It's legal now in our great state of New Mexico and the great country of the United States, and it starts getting sold recreationally in April. So if you're curious, I think it'd be an interesting thing to try.
That's true. By the way, I forgot to tell you this. You know, I've been talking a lot about looking at yourself so you can improve yourself.
Yeah, I like to veer
the
into
other
this
day
a
I
lot,
was watching this podcast.
Sure.
Normally I haven't had a chance to see him too much, but I was watching the podcast and I caught myself eating a fortune cookie.
Yeah, how was
that?
And
I looked like a cow eating its cud because I was chewing there all the time, and I said, I will never do that again. Eat a fortune cookie on the podcast.
No, not even other food?
No foods at all, because it looked terrible chewing, and then my chewing noises were going into the microphone.
The noises are gnarly. I figured it was an interesting thing to try.
Well, it
might be a little much.
Interesting from the point of view of getting the little paper that's in it and see what it says, but eating it's not conducive to good
film
manners or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like people to chew gum, for example.
No.
Have you ever seen people chewing gum?
I got kicked out of a classroom for chewing gum once in high
I'm
school.
glad they kicked you out.
Well, I kind of left. She said, if you don't stop... Here's how it went down. She was giving a lecture. Everyone was quiet. I was quiet. And she stopped her lecture and said, Tyler. And I said, what? She said, why are you interrupting my lecture? I said, what? She said, you're chewing gum. You know it's not allowed. You're interrupting my lecture. And I said, you just stopped your own lecture to tell me to stop chewing gum. I was listening to you. I'm taking notes. And I showed her my notes. So she started throwing a fit. She said, well, I'm going to send you to the office. And I said, if I'm leaving, I'm just going to go home. I'm not going to the office. She freaked out. I just got up and left. I didn't want to deal with it. I was like, this is not. So my mom made me write an apology letter. I was still a kid, but the point of the story was it's a stupid rule. Didn't listen to it.
Well, I
left the situation.
I had a similar experience. One time I was invited to give a talk before a class in this particular school, and the teachers thought that as a celebrity, it would be good to bring a celebrity and talk to her kids. So I went, and it turns out that this school had some kind of a policy where they would let the kids do anything they wanted to do. They call it free something. I don't remember exactly the term. But anyway, I was giving this
like
talk.
A parenting technique, letting them do whatever.
Well, I mean, they didn't have the behavioral restraints or whatever. They could eat their lunch whenever they wanted to. They could do whatever they wanted to. So I went to this class about 20, 25 kids, and I went to give this talk before them. It must have been about 10 in the morning or 11, whatever it was. And I went up to the podium or the front of the class to talk to these kids. And I was talking to them when all of a sudden one of the girls put her hand underneath her desk and took out her lunch. And she started to eat her lunch right in front of me, and just chomping and making all kinds of noises with the wrappings of her sandwich. And I stopped the class. I did what your teacher did. I said, would you please stop eating your lunch? Put your lunch away.
Yeah, but lunch is different than.
Well, I'm just telling you what happened to me. Yeah. And so she put her lunch away, and there was another kid that was chewing gum. And I said, stop chewing gum. And these kids had never been told to do that, never. And they were astounded. They were in shock that some person had told them to not eat lunch when they were eating lunch, because they used to do that before in the class. And the girl stopped eating her lunch. She put it back into her paper sack, and the kid took his gum out, and I continued with my lecture. And then the other teachers found out what I had done, and they invited me to lecture in their classes. And I said, no, I'm not going to. I said, I don't like the way your kids behave. And so I never went back. But
I wonder if it was a Montessori.
Pardon me?
I wonder if it was a Montessori style school. Montessori's are private schools that people.
No, that was a public school. I don't remember. They had a term for it where the kids could. They were free something. I don't remember.
It's okay. Yeah.
But anyway, that's the story, Morning Glory. So
let's open another fortune.
Do you know that we have been talking for over an hour?
Yeah, we can go to an hour and a half, or we can go to 2 if you want.
No, I don't care. I peed before.
Okay.
I got on the air, so
sounds good.
My bladder, I have a big bladder.
I think we can do one more cookie and then maybe see if we have reaction videos, if there's anything interesting.
Did you have something to talk about there?
No. Did I? No.
Let's see. I have to get you Obama as a guest. Let me see what else.
I'm going to hand you this. Let's see if we can
find
something interesting.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready for the...
Oh, too early. I got it.
There we are.
Fails.
It reminds me of the Gong Show. Do you remember the Gong Show?
No. Cheers.
God, you don't remember anything. When were you born? Yesterday?
93.
Wow. I have socks older than you.
Yeah. So, let's see.
I want to...
Nope. We talked about that one.
Okay, let's see.
And if you've got a repeat, we're just gonna move on.
Have you ever opened an risque or vulgar fortune cookies?
That would be awesome. We can get some. There's actually, that might be easier because I had to type all these and they're not interesting as they could be, but they are boxes of particularly vulgar.
Yeah, they call party fortune cookies, and they're a lot of fun on a party, you know.
Okay.
Let's see. This one says, "He who makes no mistakes makes no progress." You got right.
That's a good one. That's no repeat offender. That's a good one.
He who makes no mistakes makes no progress. My father used to say that, he says, you you need to make mistakes so you can learn, because we learn from our mistakes. Have you ever learned from your mistakes?
Yeah, to use this podcast as an example, I mean, how many episodes did we try and shoot before we decided, like, all right, we're going to use this one? There's a handful of them, right? Maybe 5 or 6. And even still, if we were trying to perfect every little mistake, we still wouldn't be on the air. Even so, we've got phone calls. My phone went off.
No, you got to get on the air because...
Yeah, the dog is howling in the back, and I got to fix that issue. These are mistakes, but, like, if we don't just push forward and try and get it rolling, then we'll never make any progress. You can never get it exactly perfect. You got to just go for it.
It's like learning how to swim. You have to throw the kid into the water so he can learn how to swim. We are learning how to swim in a podcast. And
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a podcast was.
It's an interesting, and actually, I wanted to note, maybe if the food is quiet to eat, don't be so deterred from it occasionally. It's not good to eat it all along, but like all along the whole episode of the podcast. But like we were saying at the beginning, not everyone's watching it. So like talking about the food and maybe hearing your reaction, it might not be as gross as you think.
I was just going to make the mistake that I made the other day.
Yeah, you want to hear,
I was going to eat this fortune cookie.
Have a graham cracker.
But then I'm going to sound like a cow munching on a microphone.
You can push the mic away. The mic has got
No,
a
but
swim.
what is this?
These are old-fashioned graham crackers. This is nothing exotic. I just found these at Trader Joe's. They're just really
Do they have any weed in them?
No, I promise you they do
Because
not.
I don't trust you.
I would not. I don't think that's appropriate. I do not condone that. Don't spike your friend's stuff because that's just not cool. Unless they want you to.
I'm not going to eat it because I saw myself the other day eating on the podcast and it looked terrible. Like I looked like a cow chewing his cud. Anyway, my name is Val DeLao in case, so he can finish chewing his cookie. And so while he's chewing his food, my name is Val DeLao, and I'm going to say it in Spanish. I want to invite all the people because I love
Simon
Spanish.
Chingon.
When I went to school, I didn't know a word of English. I spoke nothing but Spanish in my home, and then I learned how to speak English when I went to the first grade. But anyway.
Well, were you making lots of mistakes to make progress on that English?
I suppose I still speak with an accent. I have an accent, and I'm proud of my accent. For a while in the beginning, I used to be very ashamed of my accent. Like I used to be ashamed of my food. When I went to school, my mother would make us sandwiches with bread, and but then I'm Hispanic, and then once in a while she would run out of bread. She make us burritos.
Oh shit!
And I would take a burrito to school, and all the white kids would make fun of me because I was eating my burrito. And now, burritos is a big thing in society. Everybody eats burritos. Even the president chomping on burritos, And they also used to make fun of me because I was kind of brown, my color. And when I went to UNM to college, I saw, when I went to Long Beach, California for the first time, I saw people on the beach putting suntan lotion and all kinds of lotions on themselves so they could get brown.
Yeah, and even further, the shame was multi-generational. Whereas you started, Spanish was your first language, you learned English, and they made fun of you for tortillas at lunch. It bled into my dad's life. The next generation after that, where none of them even learned Spanish. My dad didn't learn. I mean, they know small phrases.
But you speak Spanish because you're smart.
It's just like school. I didn't learn it through the family or with friends, so it's a rather book. It's easier to read it and write it, and conversation.
Well, you do very, very well. And then when I went to college, they used to make fun of me because I had an accent. It turns out that when I went to one of my Spanish classes, it was full with Spanish-speaking people, students trying to learn how to speak Spanish. So I said to myself, if I eat tortillas, and if I eat beans, and if I am brown, and if I speak with an accent, I must be pretty darn good, because everybody's trying to be what I am.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense. And what are you doing? Are you putting sound effects into my stuff?
The little conquistador sound effect there. But what would you tell the people who are trying to establish that identity? Should they? Because we talked about earlier, a good friend will let you know if you're going off the rails. You start gaining a little too much weight, or you start getting too skinny. What would you say to people who are maybe having their personal identity attacked like that?
Well, the first thing you do, you have to love yourself.
Love yourself.
Love yourself.
That's got to be a good foundation.
You have to love yourself. You have to look in the mirror and say, I love that guy who's staring right back at me.
What if it's like well, what do you mean by love yourself? Because that could
like
turn into
yourself.
vanity,
Okay, like
right?
yourself. What you have to strive in life is to be the best version of yourself. Don't try to be like anybody else, because you're not anybody else. You will never be anybody else. You will never look like anybody else. We're like a snowflake. We are. That's why we are called individuals, because we are singular people or beings to ourselves. There will never be another Tyler DeLao. Never. When you die, that's it. There will never going to be another Val DeLao, because we look the way we look, we speak the way we speak, we act the way we speak, we think. So my advice to people who are up there listening to us, be the best version of yourself.
I've got a piece of advice, and it might be kind of a side one. Roasting. Roasting, I don't know how it is in other languages, but in English, you find the right people, it can be pretty effective. If someone's making fun of you and then you can comically make fun of them and then turn it into a game, those people who were your attackers then become part of a game that you play. It's like a language game. And comedians do this professionally with, roasts on media or stand-up open mic roast battles. Even you see it in rap, rappers will do rap battles, and a lot of that is.
I love roasting. I love
do
roasting.
You?
When I used to be a big fan of Dean Martin's roasts.
Really?
Oh God, have you ever seen them?
I haven't seen his roast.
Oh
but
my God, they would have a movie star or a big personality like Sinatra or Bob Hope or Ronald Reagan or somebody of that sort, and they would roast the heck out of them, and they would tell some real funny stories, and sometimes they could be a little bit. Not offensive because it was a roast.
Sometimes they get really personal.
But they can get kind of personal.
That's the game. That's the art of it. It's that line in comedy of language is like, how far is too far? Where is funny, really, really funny? Okay, you cross that line.
That's true.
It's a very, very difficult art.
Exactly. That's very amazing. And when I used to watch Dean Martin's roasts, I used to love them because I noticed that very thing. That they would go up to a point and they would not go anymore.
Yeah,
because you don't want to offend the person.
Because then you just look like
an
ass.
They would not talk about real personal things. I remember.
What would it would be more maybe like clothing?
It could be almost anything.
Maybe,
their movies, for example,
maybe a little
or
bit
the
of
singing. Like one time they were roasting Sinatra, and they said that. Sinatra really was not recording himself when he made the records. Somebody else was he was using somebody else's voice. And so they said, who was the voice? What was the guy that supposedly was doing Sinatra? And of course, that was not true. And there was a big laugh because Sinatra, who sings like Sinatra? No, he was it. And but that's the way they roast people. But you have to be very careful that you don't offend people a lot or really pick on their personal life. Like I used to tell this kid one time was trying to learn from me how to interview people. And I said, there's certain things you do not ask from the person that you're interviewing. This
is good. Actually, I'm going to write this down. I'm actually
write it down because you will have violated my rule a little bit.
I've already violated the rule?
Yes, you have.
Okay.
Number 1.
Okay.
Do not ask them how old they are.
Okay.
Number 2, do not ask them if they're married or single.
Why?
And I'll tell you in a minute. And number 3, don't ask them how much money they make.
Now, this is an interesting one because a lot of the guests we're going to be talking about business and finance, so it's going to be interesting navigating around the X amounts.
Don't say, Mr. So-and-so,
we'll have to
how much money did you make last year?
Yeah, so, yeah. I'm gonna have
Imagine if the IRS is listening to you or something like that. No, you do not ask that. Don't ask if they're married or not.
Okay.
I had this guy one time, a big movie star by the name of Lucha Villa. She was in town, and he was interviewing Lucha Villa, who's a Mexican movie star. And the first thing he asked, how old are you, Lucha? And man, I cringed when I heard that question. You don't ask a movie star or big personality how old they are, particularly a woman. You don't do that. And he did. And then he asked her, how much money do you make per movie?
Jeez.
What a stupid thing. And number 3, are you married? Are you single? And you don't ask those questions.
So how might be a way I can ask someone about their financial success or their business success without getting numbers? What
you can say, are you very successful in this business?
Okay.
Financially? And the person will say, yes, I am.
Can I ask
I mean, but you don't ask him, give me a money figure. How much? 1 million, 2 million?
No, I don't plan on that.
You don't do that. How old are you? You don't do that either.
Right, okay.
Because maybe they have lied a little bit or stretched the truth, or maybe somebody is checking on them or whatever.
And this might apply to just meeting new people. This might not just be interviews. You probably just don't want to ask strangers these questions, right?
You don't want to ask those questions. Keep them out of your interrogation? Interrogation. Whatever. See, my English is
again, that goes back to that mistakes, but you got to make them to make progress.
That's what I'm saying.
But the point of language is to convey a meaning, and I understand.
Like a while ago, you say, wait a minute, 20 years ago, how old were you?
Oh, yeah. No, that was the...
I said to myself, I'm going to kill this dude. He's asking the wrong question. See, you are already learning.
But that was because we've already talked about your age a little bit, so I feel like that line was kind of already established in the last few episodes.
No,
I was joking
care.
about it a little. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not afraid of saying my age, but
I would never have done that.
And you're a member of my family, see.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that there are certain questions that are taboo that you should not ask in an interview.
Do you have any others other than those 3?
Well, those are the things that come to mind. I'm sure there's others as well. They come up, but you have to be careful. You can get almost any information that you want from that person if you are, tactful.
What about if I were to ask you, like, what are any big failures that you've had?
Oh, you can ask those.
Yeah.
No, failures are. I've had lots of failures in my life. Many, many, many failures. I don't. I told you once before I made a big mistake when I.
But related to business, related
to business. I used to own properties. I own land. I own buildings and stuff like that, and I made the mistake of selling them about 30 years ago. Big mistake. Right now, if I had held on to those properties, that was my intention to begin with, they would be worth millions. So you'd be talking right now to a millionaire.
Maybe I am. I don't know.
It could be, but I'm a millionaire in love.
So that's another one. How do you quantify success in your life? Like, is that too personal? Because someone might
success. You know, in our society, people gear or rate or gauge, for lack of a better word, success in money. In how much money do you have? If a person makes 10 million instead of 5 million, this person who made 10 million is more successful than the one who made 5 million. That is not true. Who is most successful? Let's say Albert Einstein, or some famous, or Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. Who's?
That's apples and oranges. That's different.
That's exactly. Yeah. Apples and oranges.
That's tough.
Man was a genius in his field, and Mike Jagger in something else. So you cannot judge one person by the other. So money, once you have enough.
So success is relative to the individual.
Exactly. The success is relative. You're successful already.
I would disagree. I mean, in some aspects, I'm in a comfortable lifestyle, but like where I want to be, I do not.
Well, that's a different story. That's a different story. Those are your aspirations. You want to be somewhere. It's like going on a trip, but if you're going to trip from here to California, for example, you have to go through Gallup and Flagstaff, etc., until you get to California. You are embarked in a trip. We're all embarked on a trip of life. And if you haven't reached your goal, which is the place where you want to reach, like California, for example, you haven't been successful yet on your trip. But you can be successful on the way there. The famous Mexican composer Jose Alfredo Jimenez wrote a beautiful song, very, very famous. And he says, the point is not to get there. The point is to make the trip.
I like this. I heard this analogy about listening to music. We don't listen to songs to get to the end of the song.
Exactly.
If that was the case, the people who wrote the shortest songs would be the best composers.
Exactly.
We listen to the song because it's transient. It's about being in the moment of the song while it's happening. This is why music is my favorite art form, because I guess technically an image is transient as you're visualizing it, but it's also static. It just kind of stays. Yeah.
By the way, you play the keyboard and the guitar. When are you going to play for us something someday?
We'll show some clips probably next month. I have a new band coming out. It's me and a saxophone player. He's also kind of a DJ. And
can you reveal the name of the band yet?
Yeah, it's Toss, like sauce with a T.
Ducks?
Toss.
How do you spell it?
Tauce.
T-A-U.
Like sauce.
Oh, like socks, like your socks?
No, sauce. You're making this hard on me on purpose, aren't you? It's intentionally misspelled because the word does not exist on the internet.
Oh,
Again, it's an SEO, it's a search engine optimization.
Well, it's like Valentino with an O, Valentino.
Yeah.
What a subtle way of mentioning my name once more.
But we'll be releasing some stuff real soon. We've been in the studio cooking up some stuff. And
by the way, what is your name again?
My name is Tyler De La O.
And my name is Val De La O.
Yeah,
and we're having a lot of fun today. Today has been a very special day for me.
Why is today a special day?
For some reason, I got up happy. Sometimes you don't get up happy. Sometimes you get up in the morning and I don't feel too happy.
What caused that?
Normally, diet.
Okay.
When you feel bad, like if you feel bad today, think of what you ate yesterday. It might be that something that you ate yesterday is having a chemical reaction within your body, and you feel bad. Some people having the extreme part of that is that you get diarrhea, or you have a headache, or you vomit, or whatever. So when I tell people as a doctor, I used to tell them, if you feel bad today, think of what you ate yesterday, so you can correct it. And the body's it's an action and reaction. All it is, your body's reacting to what you ate yesterday, and it's making you feel bad, so you won't do it anymore.
Well, what did you eat yesterday that made you feel so good this morning?
I'm trying to figure it out. Let's see. Oh, yes, I went to eat at my daughter's house, and she had some chicken and a beautiful sauce. She's a wonderful cook, and so is my son-in-law. And she feeds me every Sunday. She invites me to dinner, and we had a wonderful dinner. But beyond the ambience, also, but beyond that was the family. I love to eat with my family, and I like to eat for friends. The one thing that I hate is eat by myself.
Maybe it was simply having dinner with your family.
Well,
that not just filled you up in the stomach, but filled you up.
Well, that's true. I don't like to eat by myself, and if you eat with your family and people that love you and you love them, that's a complete meal right there. People ought to eat with their families. That's why Thanksgiving is so important. We sit down with a family, your brothers, your sister, your father, your mother, whatever. You eat with your family. I think that family is the most important thing in a man's life. That is the most important thing in my life. My family.
But there came a point in your life, right, where you eventually split off and started your own family, and then that became your family.
Then that family became most important to me because the old people started to die. So now, my generation is starting to die. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to go to El Paso because a friend of mine died over there, and I'm going to his funeral. I lost 3 friends in the last month or so. Very dear friends, musicians.
And I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah,
And I'm sad because when you get older, you start losing your friends and your relatives, your contemporaries, and all of a sudden you start noticing that you don't have friends anymore. And it's too late to make new friends. People say, well, why don't you make new friends? Oh, you can make some, but the real friends, it takes years and years to develop a friendship with somebody. And I don't have time anymore.
No.
Like I told my grandson the other day, the secret to getting rich, if you really want to get rich.
Yes, I'm sure anyone listening does.
Real estate plus time equals wealth. Real estate plus time equals wealth. That's a guarantee that you will get wealthy. If you buy real estate, land, buildings, whatever, houses, whatever it may be, plus time.
But what if someone doesn't have enough money or credit
yes,
for a full house?
We all have enough money.
Do we?
If you want to be rich, save 10% of your income every time you make money. If you get a check this week for $1,000, save 10%. That's $100. So surely you can survive.
Pay yourself first?
Exactly. Pay yourself first. You'll be surprised, and then invest that money. You'll be surprised what's going to happen in 20 years from now. You'll be a rich man.
It's probably one of my problems. I end up paying all my other bills, and then I kind of just leave myself with whatever's left over, and then that's probably backwards.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
But that means that your objective is not to get rich, because if you really want to get rich, you would follow a formula.
Well, I'm taking your advice, and one of those things was that wealth and fame are only byproducts of what you're doing. So the point of I'm not trying to get rich. I'm trying to create a business and a robust way of life that can then be monetized.
Well, do whatever is important to you as long as it doesn't hurt you or hurt other people.
Nah, I don't think. Yeah.
Become a best version of Tyler DeLao that you can possibly find. And I already admire you.
Well, thanks.
And I talk good of you, and you have an old man who admires you. And not just because you're my nephew, because you're a good person. You don't hurt anybody. You are doing a podcast. You were kind enough to invite me to do this thing.
Oh, you just haven't seen my basement.
Your what?
My basement.
Your basement?
Yeah.
Is it full of garbage?
It's full of prisoners.
Well, are they alive or dead?
Some of them are alive, some of them are dead. I got to check, make sure.
No, you're a good person.
Yeah, we can wrap it up now. Actually, let's see if there's any reaction videos, just for fun. Let's see if we can pull up a tab, and that's Google Drive. Can you read those for me, Cameron? It's a little. Can
you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So we got Exoskeleton Mecha.
Okay.
Scary Dude.
Okay.
No, I think we watched No Pomegranates.
Let's do the Exoskeleton Mecha, because I do love showing my uncle this. Let's turn that volume down on TikTok, because it might be kind of loud. Now, this is a suit some people made, and it's a robot suit. So before we were talking about robots and androids, but this is something that a guy wears that can help him pick up extremely heavy things. So I have a feeling people are going to be walking around in these once they become affordable. There's going to be so many modifications to clothing and suits. They're going to have little robot companions. Would you ever hop in one of those?
I might.
Yeah? Let's look up the Scary Dude. Let's go. Yeah, let's see what this guy's up to. So for any of the listeners, he's a man. He's on the side of the road, and he's doing some art with his body. I don't know if it's a dance. He's licking his tongue. He's looking up at the sky and fondling the air with his fingers. So do you think he's out there performing?
He probably is.
You think so?
People will do things like this to get the reaction of the public. Sometimes they're not crazy at all. Sometimes they're just trying to get a reaction from the public, from whomever's seeing them.
So we should be careful.
They might even be conducting an experiment of some sorts.
Ooh, I've done that for a high school project. We had to go do some experiments. One of them was called the invisible rope test, and invisible rope. And I don't recommend it because it could be dangerous. It's like on the lighter end, but you get a friend, and Both of you stand on one side of the street. You go to a residential neighborhood. You both stand on one side of the street, and as a car approaches, one friend stands on this side. The other friend starts to cross the street and unroll an invisible rope. So it looks like two people are unraveling an invisible rope, and right as the car comes to pass you, you both pull on the invisible rope, and you see how many cars stop and how many just drive right through.
God.
And it was interesting. A lot of people stopped, and there was actually an old lady who refused to pass through the invisible rope. She was old. She was at the steering wheel. We were holding it. We were going to see how long she was going to wait there, but we eventually dropped the invisible rope so that she could proceed on her route.
On the invisible pavement.
The pavement was real, but so you got to be careful with people doing stuff out there.
Were you guys visible, or were you invisible?
We
also?
were visible. It was daylight.
I'm just joshing now.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's good. People ought to do things like that. The only thing that I can say, again, is that try not to hurt anybody.
Try not to hurt anybody.
Remember that. When you do something, don't try not to hurt anybody. Try not to hurt yourself, and because you're somebody.
What do you think about egging a car?
What?
Egging a car.
For what purpose?
I've been egged. Getting on the freeway, I've had kids egging me. They egged my car.
Throw eggs at you?
Didn't really hurt me, but I mean, is it
No,
harmless
I wouldn't
fun?
do that because you're hurting somebody.
How?
Well, what if you hit them on an eye and you put one of their eyes out? Or what if they blind them for a moment and another car hits them or whatever? No, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Some of the kids are dumber. They're dropping bricks off of bridges. And
No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to hurt anybody. Remember, you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to hurt anybody, and not necessarily physically. Sometimes psychologically, or that's why I don't like practical jokes or hurt somebody. You know what? When I was in college one time, I lived in a dormitory, and these kids put a snake in this guy's bed.
Ooh, was it venomous or just?
Well, no, it was not venomous, but they still put a snake.
That's mean.
Exactly, that's mean. And when he crawled into bed,
oh my God,
he felt a snake on his body. And I told, if somebody ever dares to do that with me, they got a fight in their hands. Because I would never do a thing like that to any human being. Put a snake in their clothing or something like that. So getting again to the original premise, don't hurt anybody and don't hurt yourself, their reputation. Don't spread lies of somebody who is, that he's this or he's that, or, I mean, those are not practical jokes anymore. That is being mean.
I feel like it's a good piece of advice for running a business too. If you've got a good mission ahead of you, if you've got a real good product that works or a good service that's actually working and you're not scamming people, that business is going to live a lot longer, right? If you're out there trying to get a quick buck scamming people, I mean, sooner it's that operation's going to fall apart.
Well, I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine that pretended to be a doctor.
Oh, snap. That's not good.
And he did very well because he was scamming people.
What kind of doctor?
Well, he was some kind of a nutritional doctor or whatever. And,
okay.
And he was
something like you.
He's putting on concoctions. Well, I'm a real doctor. I'm an ND. I'm a naturopathic doctor.
Yeah.
But this guy, for a moment, I believed him. I thought he was a doctor too.
Oh.
And he used to call himself Doctor so and so. And he went on radio and he was advertising. He was very good in convincing people. Well, a lot of people came to him. And what he would do, he would make some kind of concoction. His bottles never had labels, but he would give them to people. And he said, this will help you with whatever you have. And he would charge $100 for the bottle, $200, $300. What he actually would do, he would sell treatments. He said, do you have sciatica, or do you have headaches, or do you have whatever? Well, if you take this treatment, you will get if you have cancer, you have dementia, whatever, take this and most likely within 4 or 5 months you will not have it. What he was doing, he was stretching the time frame so they would take these medicines for 5, 6, 7 months.
Sounds like something the
but what happened,
do.
It caught up with him eventually.
Yeah.
And people started to report him to the authorities. You cannot pretend to be a doctor if you're not a doctor. You got to be you have to be what you are. You cannot be an attorney if you're not. You cannot pretend to be an attorney if you're not an attorney or a doctor or a policeman. I know people that pretend to be policemen.
Yeah, these
they
are
buy
all
a uniform
very illegal.
somewhere, or they make a uniform, and then they get a badge and a light, and they stop cars. But eventually they get caught, and you don't want to do that.
No.
So don't hurt people. Don't hurt yourself. Be a good person.
And scamming people, stealing is hurting too, right? Even if it's fake, invisible, made up cryptocurrency, NFT money. Money's pretty much just made up as it is, right? It's just you and me agreeing that this is worth something.
That's
and
correct.
The moment we say it's not worth anything, it's not. So
this cookie's not very good.
I like the cookie. These are good cookies.
Oh, I say okay.
You getting hungry?
I'm a little hungry.
Maybe we'll wrap up and have lunch or something soon.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Any podcast listeners out there, we're live on twitch.tv/delaostudios. And anyone listening on Twitch right now, it would help us a lot if you head over to our YouTube channel and hit a subscribe button on our YouTube channel. If you're already watching us on YouTube, head over to our Twitch channel and go give us a follow over there or here on YouTube. Anyone listening on Spotify, it would really help us build some momentum if we can get these YouTube and Twitch accounts to that next level, because we're going to get some new and interesting guests on. My uncle's going to kind of mentor me through walking through how not to ask them how old they are and stuff like that. So it's going to get interesting. You're going to want to keep up to date with the people coming in pretty soon. We're going to have some interesting conversations.
One last question. What is your favorite food? If you were going to be executed and they asked you, what is going to be your final meal, what would you...
A buffet.
No, the buffet is not a meal. It's a bunch of meals put together.
I know, I can't choose. It's a really difficult. It would have to have some sort of meat. It would have to have some sort of sauce, and I love my greens.
Think about it till next time we do another podcast, and think of something that you would order, a particular food, a plate, something that we are familiar with.
That's tough, yeah.
You can ask me.
What is your favorite meal? What do you want
Enchiladas.
You want me to serve you enchiladas on your deathbed?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I was going to be executed, they would say, what would you like as your last meal? I would say enchiladas, red chili enchiladas.
Do they ask you what do you want for your last meal for death rows? Do they get what they want?
Yes, they do.
Really?
Even today they
serial
ask you.
killer's gonna get the
It doesn't matter. It's going to be your last meal. What do you want for your last meal?
Oh, I guess that's weird. What if
so you die with that meal in your stomach?
But they were a bad person. I mean, we still give them the decency to have a good meal.
Well, God, again, you have to be good to people. Even
if you're killing them, you're throwing them on the chair.
Well, so you are, but you're not killing them. The law, society's killing them because they did something evil. But it's a customary that they ask the person upon execution, what do you want to be your last meal? And mine would be enchiladas.
Enchiladas with
red chili.
What kind of meat? Chicken?
No, just cheese enchiladas with a little refried beans and rice on a plate.
Yeah.
And a cold beer.
And a cold beer.
George W. Bush says you cannot eat Mexican food without drinking a beer. And I agree with him.
It definitely is a bit better with some beer. But if you're like me and you just don't drink alcohol,
you don't drink beer?
I haven't had any alcohol for almost 2 years now. So I do definitely partake in the cannabis. But everyone does different things. But I like LaCroix or like bubbly carbonated waters, Perrier. Those are kind of like beer, but I don't have to worry about any of the bad decisions.
In moderation?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Moderation.
See you later. Thank you very much. Gracias por la gente que escucharon y que nos estuvieron viendo. And that's it. Yo soy Valentino de la O.
Yo soy Tyler de la O.
That's it. Okay.
Bueno, cuando muere el amor.
¿Así se llama? ¿Cuando muere el amor?
Cuando muere el amor.
Ok.
Dicen que el amor nunca muere, pero sí muere. Ya no brillan las estrellas, ya no son las cosas bellas, ya no nace una canción. Cuando muere el amor, unas cartas olvidadas, las fotografías guardadas, una cama sin calor. Cuando muere el amor, una mirada que se esquiva, una frente pensativa, unos labios sin color. Cuando muere el amor, un teléfono callado, un fuego apagado, un suspiro sin dolor. Cuando muere el amor, una puerta sin espera, un camino sin barreras, un jarrón sin una flor. Cuando muere el amor,